What if the key to true fulfillment, inner peace, and earning genuine respect isn't something we can buy, achieve, or search for externally, but something that resides within us all along? Think about it. We live in a world where we're constantly seeking approval from others, whether it's through our work, relationships, or online presence. But what if the real secret to living a fulfilling life, to being respected and admired, lies in aligning our actions with values that transcend external validation? What if the foundation of all the happiness, respect, and peace we crave is not in what we do, but in how we choose to be? In today's video, we're diving into a perspective that's as ancient as it is timeless. Buddhist teachings that provide not just spiritual wisdom but practical, everyday tools for living a life full of purpose, compassion, and yes, respect. This isn't about theory, it's about actionable principles that we can start applying today to transform not just our inner world, but how we interact with the world around us. As we explore these teachings, we'll uncover real-world applications that go beyond the typical spiritual talk. These are principles that will help you foster deeper relationships, develop emotional resilience, and, most importantly, earn the respect and admiration of those around you by simply being a better version of yourself. Now, before we dive deep, I've got a question for you. What if you could start creating a life that feels fulfilling, where respect and peace follow naturally without you needing to force it? Stick with me in this video, and I'll show you exactly how you can do just that. But before we get started, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay updated on more content like this. Also, feel free to share this video with friends or family who could benefit from a little peace and perspective. Ready to dive in? Let's go. What if the key to earning respect, peace, and true fulfillment is not something outside of us, but within? It's a question that challenges the way we typically approach personal growth and success. In a world that often encourages us to seek approval, validation, and external recognition, the idea that respect and fulfillment might be a natural byproduct of our inner state rather than external circumstances is revolutionary. This concept isn't just theoretical, it's grounded in practical teachings, many of which have been passed down through centuries. One such tradition is Buddhism, which offers profound insights not only for spiritual growth, but for the way we live our everyday lives. In this discussion, we will explore the Buddhist teachings that go beyond mere philosophy, offering practical guidance that can be applied daily to bring transformation and fulfillment. Buddhism is often misunderstood in the West as a set of abstract philosophical ideas or esoteric practices that have little relevance in the fast-paced, material-driven world we live in. However, at its core, Buddhism is about cultivating awareness, mindfulness, and compassion, qualities that resonate deeply with human experiences. These teachings provide us with a framework for living authentically and harmoniously with ourselves and others. What's more, the principles embedded in Buddhism have the potential to foster deep respect not only from others, but for ourselves as well. It's important to note that the respect we seek is not an end goal but a byproduct of how we choose to live our lives. By embodying these principles, respect naturally follows. A core teaching of Buddhism is the idea of interconnectedness. It suggests that all beings, regardless of their form or background, are connected in some way. This interconnectedness implies that our actions, thoughts, and words affect others in ways we may not always see. When we recognize that we are part of a larger whole, it's easier to adopt a mindset of empathy and compassion. Think about the way our actions ripple through the lives of those around us. When we treat others with kindness, it has a positive effect on their well-being, which in turn can influence the broader community. For instance, a simple act of kindness, a smile, a helping hand, or a word of encouragement can brighten someone's day. This chain of positive actions ultimately creates an environment where respect, trust, and mutual support flourish. Compassion, a central tenet of Buddhism, is not limited to the act of helping others. It's about understanding the suffering that others experience and being moved by it. It's about recognizing that, just like us, everyone has their own struggles and challenges. When we approach others with compassion, we stop seeing them as separate from us and begin to see them as part of the same human experience. we understand that their joys and struggles are also our joys and struggles. For example, think about how we might interact with a friend going through a tough time. Rather than offering quick solutions or advice, we might simply sit with them, listen, and offer emotional support. In that moment, we are not just helping them, we are connecting with them on a deeper level, demonstrating empathy, and creating a space where respect can grow. The ability to empathize with others' pain and joy fosters a sense of unity, and in turn, respect naturally follows. Another key aspect of Buddhist teachings is the practice of right speech. In a world filled with fast-paced communication and social media soundbites, the art of thoughtful, deliberate communication can easily be lost. Right speech, as outlined in Buddhist philosophy, is not just about avoiding lies or falsehoods, but about choosing words that are beneficial, kind, and timely. In many ways, the words we choose define the relationships we have with others. When we speak with care, when we avoid harsh or hurtful remarks, we cultivate an environment of respect. Conversely, thoughtless words can create unnecessary conflict and erode trust. Take, for example, the situation where we're in an argument with a loved one. In the heat of the moment, it's easy to lash out with words that might sting, but doing so often leads to regret and resentment. On the other hand, if we take a moment to pause, reflect, and choose our words more carefully, we are more likely to navigate the conversation in a way that preserves respect and understanding. The practice of right speech requires patience, something that is often in short supply in our busy lives. It involves creating space between a trigger and a response, allowing us to reflect before reacting impulsively. This doesn't mean suppressing our feelings, but rather expressing them in a way that doesn't harm others. Right speech and patience are closely intertwined. When we are patient, we allow ourselves the time and space to process our emotions, thoughts, and reactions. This is especially important when dealing with difficult situations or individuals. Let's consider a workplace scenario where two colleagues have a disagreement. If one person reacts hastily or defensively, the situation can escalate quickly. However, if both parties take the time to listen, understand, and reflect before responding, the conversation is more likely to result in a productive resolution. By practicing patience and right speech, we not only improve our communication but also demonstrate respect for the other person's perspective. Gratitude, another foundational aspect of Buddhism, is a powerful practice that enhances both our emotional well-being and our relationships with others. Gratitude is about appreciating the things we have, big and small, and recognizing that these blessings, whether they be relationships, opportunities, or even simple comforts, are not guaranteed. When we cultivate a daily practice of gratitude, we shift our focus from what we lack to what we have. This change in perspective can be transformative, fostering a deeper sense of peace and contentment in our lives. A personal story comes to mind here. I remember a time in my life when I was constantly focusing on what I didn't have, a job that didn't fulfill me, a relationship that wasn't working, and a sense of direction that felt elusive. It wasn't until I began a daily gratitude practice that I started noticing the small blessings in my life, the supportive friends who had been there for me through tough times, the opportunities one had to learn and grow, and the quiet moments of peace I took for granted. As I became more aware of these blessings, my outlook began to shift. I no longer felt consumed by a sense of lack, but instead developed a deeper sense of gratitude for the present moment. This practice not only improved my mental health, but also deepened my relationships with others. When we express gratitude, whether to ourselves or others, we create an environment of positivity that naturally fosters respect and appreciation. But gratitude alone is not enough to earn the respect we seek. The practice of self-reflection is equally important. Buddhism teaches that in order to grow, we must regularly look inward and examine our thoughts, actions, and intentions. Self-reflection is about understanding who we are and why we do what we do. It helps us identify patterns in our behavior that may not serve us well and gives us the opportunity to course correct. For instance, I once noticed that I had a tendency to become defensive in conversations where I felt misunderstood. Through self-reflection, I realized that this defensiveness stemmed from a fear of rejection. By acknowledging this fear and working through it, I was able to improve my communication and approach relationships with greater openness and understanding. Self-reflection also helps us recognize our strengths and weaknesses, which is essential for personal growth. By identifying our strengths, we can build on them and use them to benefit others, while understanding our weaknesses allows us to develop humility. Humility is an important aspect of earning respect. It means acknowledging that we don't have all the answers and being open to learning from others. When we approach life with humility, we not only open ourselves to new opportunities, but also demonstrate a willingness to listen, learn, and grow. This attitude naturally earns the respect of others. One of the most profound teachings in Buddhism is the principle of non-attachment. This teaching suggests that we can experience life fully without becoming overly attached to specific outcomes, possessions, or even identities. Non-attachment doesn't mean indifference or apathy. It means recognizing that life is constantly changing and that nothing is permanent. Our attachments to things or outcomes often create suffering because they set us up for disappointment when things don't go as planned. Think of how much stress we experience when we obsess over a goal or attachment to a particular outcome. In contrast, when we practice non-attachment, we can pursue our goals without being consumed by the outcome. This allows us to maintain peace and balance, even when things don't go our way. Take, for example, a job search. It's easy to become overly attached to getting a specific job, but when we shift our perspective and focus on the process rather than the outcome, we reduce stress and anxiety. We also open ourselves to unexpected opportunities that we might have otherwise overlooked. Non-attachment frees us to engage fully in life, without the fear of losing what we think is essential. When we combine these teachings, interconnectedness, compassion, right speech, gratitude, humility, self-reflection, and non-attachment, we begin to see the path to earning respect not as a destination, but as an ongoing journey. The respect we seek from others is a reflection of how we live, not something we can demand. By living authentically, compassionately, and mindfully, we naturally inspire respect from those around us. Ultimately, the teachings of Buddhism provide us with the tools to create meaningful, fulfilling lives that are grounded in peace, self-respect, and compassion. These principles offer us a way to navigate the complexities of modern life with grace and wisdom. The respect we receive from others is simply a natural byproduct of living in alignment with our values. The more we embody these teachings, the more we will inspire positive change in the world and in the lives of those around us. The concept of interconnectedness and compassion is deeply woven into the fabric of Buddhist philosophy. It speaks to the idea that all beings, regardless of their backgrounds, cultures, or experiences, are intricately connected. This view goes beyond merely recognizing that we share a common world. It implies that our actions, thoughts, and feelings reverberate throughout the lives of others. It challenges us to think beyond the individual and to consider how our lives intertwine with the larger web of existence. Interconnectedness, in a Buddhist context, suggests that no one is truly separate from another. The suffering of one person is felt by all, just as the joy of one person can uplift others. When we recognize that we are part of a shared human experience, empathy comes naturally. This awareness isn't just an intellectual understanding. It's an emotional realization that deeply impacts how we treat others. By embracing the interconnectedness of all beings, we begin to see the world not as a collection of isolated individuals, but as a unified, complex system in which each action has a ripple effect. In everyday life, this principle can be illustrated in numerous ways. For example, consider the way we respond when we see someone in need. In a busy city, it's easy to walk past someone asking for help or struggling with a difficult situation. But when we pause and consider their humanity, when we see them not as a stranger but as a person who, like us, has hopes, fears, and struggles, compassion naturally arises. Recognizing their humanity becomes the first step in offering help. It's not just about doing something nice for another person, but about understanding that their pain is our pain, their joy is our joy. And by acting with empathy, we honor that shared experience. This insight into interconnectedness extends beyond just responding to immediate needs. It influences the way we live our lives in the long term. When we recognize our interconnectedness with others, we begin to approach relationships, communities, and even global issues with greater awareness and responsibility. For instance, when we see that our environmental choices impact the lives of others, often those who are least able to protect themselves, we are more likely to make sustainable choices. The water we waste today could be the water someone else needs tomorrow. The carbon emissions we produce affect air quality in other parts of the world. Our consumption patterns have far-reaching effects on the lives of others. And when we grasp this, we are more inclined to act in ways that are mindful of the broader human experience. At a more personal level, compassion becomes a tool for transformation. It's not just about doing something for someone else. It's about recognizing the reflection of our own self in others. This is the personal insight that comes with practicing compassion. When we are kind to others, we are not only helping them, we are helping ourselves. Compassion can be viewed as a mirror. When we extend kindness to others, we reflect our own inner growth and evolution. It is through these acts of empathy that we become more attuned to our shared humanity. A story comes to mind that perfectly illustrates this idea. A man was walking down the street one chilly afternoon when he saw an older woman struggling with her groceries. She was trying to lift a heavy bag, and it was clear that she needed help. Without thinking, he rushed over and offered assistance, lifting the bag and walking her to her door. As they chatted along the way, she expressed her gratitude. But what struck the man most wasn't her thanks, it was the feeling that arose within him after helping her. In that moment, he realized that the act of kindness was not just about alleviating her burden, but also about his own growth. Helping her had shifted something inside of him. It had made him feel more connected, more human, more compassionate. This man's experience highlights a deeper understanding of compassion. When we help others, we aren't just performing a selfless act for someone in need. We are engaging in a process of self-discovery. It's through acts of kindness that we realize our own potential for empathy, growth, and understanding. In Buddhist thought, this aligns with the concept of bodhisattva, a being who, motivated by compassion, seeks to alleviate the suffering of others while simultaneously working on their own spiritual development. The process of helping others becomes a path of personal transformation. Compassion is not a one-sided act. It's a mutual exchange that nurtures the growth of both the giver and the receiver. This leads us to the practical lesson. How do we cultivate a deeper sense of empathy and compassion in our daily lives? The answer lies in simple, yet profound, practices that can be woven into our routines. First, it requires a shift in mindset, a shift from seeing others as separate from ourselves to recognizing that we are all interconnected. One of the simplest ways to do this is to listen more attentively. Too often, we are so caught up in our own thoughts and distractions that we fail to truly listen when others speak. Listening with empathy involves being fully present in the moment, not only hearing the words being said, but also understanding the emotions behind them. When we listen with an open heart, we connect with others on a deeper level. This act of deep listening helps us to truly empathize with others, to feel their joys and struggles, and to recognize our shared humanity. Listening deeply also means offering help without expectation. In many cases, we help others because we want something in return: validation, praise, or a sense of accomplishment. But true compassion arises when we help simply for the sake of helping. When we assist others without expecting anything in return, we engage in the most genuine form of compassion. This doesn't mean we should ignore our own needs or neglect healthy boundaries, but rather that we should approach the act of giving with an open heart, without ulterior motives. A perfect example of this can be seen in the way volunteers serve communities. Think of individuals who spend hours in a homeless shelter or at a food bank, giving their time and resources without expecting anything in return. The volunteers who act out of genuine compassion often find that, even though they are giving, they are also receiving something valuable in return: a sense of fulfillment, connection, and purpose. The joy that comes from knowing we've made a positive impact on someone else's life is often more profound than the material rewards we might receive. And in this way, compassion is not just about what we do for others, but about what it does for us as well. In practice, cultivating compassion also means extending kindness even when it's difficult. There will undoubtedly be moments when we are faced with challenging people or situations. Perhaps we are dealing with someone who is rude, dismissive, or unkind. In these instances, it's easy to close off and respond with anger or defensiveness. But Buddhism teaches us that the key to true compassion is not responding with judgment, but with understanding. Even when it's difficult, practicing compassion means choosing kindness and patience over anger and frustration. Consider the story of a woman who, after a long day at work, encountered a man in the parking lot who angrily bumped into her as he was rushing to his car. Her initial reaction was to feel upset and frustrated, but she quickly realized that the man might be experiencing something stressful or difficult. Instead of snapping back, she offered him a calm smile and said, "I hope your day gets better." The man paused for a moment, and his anger seemed to dissipate. What started as a tense moment turned into a brief, shared recognition of the humanity in each other. In that simple exchange, the woman exercised compassion. By choosing to respond with kindness instead of frustration, she not only prevented a potential conflict, but also experienced a deep sense of peace. This kind of compassionate response can be transformative. It requires us to look beyond our initial emotional reactions and recognize that everyone has a story, everyone has struggles that we might not see on the surface. Responding with compassion doesn't mean we have to tolerate mistreatment, but it means we approach others with understanding rather than judgment. In the end, compassion and interconnectedness are not just abstract concepts but practical tools that can profoundly impact our lives and the lives of others. By recognizing that we are all part of a larger whole, we cultivate empathy, understanding, and kindness. Compassion becomes a practice that not only improves our relationships with others, but also enhances our own growth and emotional well-being. When we see ourselves in others, when we act out of empathy, and when we listen with an open heart, we create a world that is more connected, more harmonious, and more compassionate. In this way, our practice of compassion becomes not just an act of kindness toward others, but an act of growth for ourselves as well. Through compassion, we unlock a deeper sense of fulfillment and peace, realizing that by helping others, we are also helping ourselves. Right speech, in the Buddhist tradition, is far more than simply the act of speaking honestly or politely. It's a practice that integrates truthfulness with kindness, mindfulness, and discernment. The concept of right speech is not just about avoiding lies or deceit. It's about ensuring that our words align with a higher standard of communication, words that are beneficial, timely, and kind. In Buddhism, right speech is one of the essential components of the Noble Eightfold Path, which offers a roadmap for ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. It is intertwined with other principles, particularly patience, because effective communication requires time, thoughtfulness, and restraint. To understand right speech fully, it's important to recognize that it involves both positive actions and the avoidance of harmful speech. The Buddha encouraged his followers to refrain from 4 primary types of speech: lying, divisive speech, harsh words, and gossip. These forms of communication not only harm others, but also perpetuate conflict, misunderstanding, and negativity. On the other hand, right speech emphasizes truthful, kind, and helpful communication. It isn't just about saying the right words, it's about cultivating a mindful approach to how we communicate with others and with ourselves. A key aspect of right speech is the role of patience. When we speak in the heat of the moment, we often allow our emotions to dictate our words. Anger, frustration, or anxiety can cloud our judgment and lead to impulsive comments that may hurt others and escalate conflicts. Patience, however, helps us to pause, reflect, and choose our words carefully. By practicing patience, we gain the space to think before we speak, allowing us to respond thoughtfully rather than react emotionally. This patience creates an opportunity for more harmonious and meaningful exchanges. Many of us can recall situations where reactive speech led to unintended consequences. In stressful moments, it's all too easy to blurt out something that we later regret, especially when we're frustrated, overwhelmed, or defensive. For example, Consider a time when a simple misunderstanding at work led to an argument. Perhaps someone asked you to complete a task at the last minute, and you, feeling under pressure, snapped back with a harsh remark. The comment might have been truthful, but it lacked consideration for the other person's perspective. This reactive speech could have triggered defensiveness or even hurt feelings, creating tension that lasted longer than necessary. Reflecting on such experiences can help us recognize the importance of right speech and patience. In my own life, I've had moments where a hasty response only intensified a situation, leading to regret and frustration. However, I've also learned that by pausing before responding, I can choose my words with greater care and compassion. The practice of patience helps us to slow down our reactions, creating an opening for more thoughtful, empathetic, and respectful communication. One example that stands out to me involved a conflict I witnessed in a workplace setting. It was an early morning meeting, and two colleagues had a disagreement over a project deadline. One person felt that the deadline was unreasonable, while the other was convinced that it was perfectly achievable. The conversation quickly became tense, with both parties becoming defensive. As the situation escalated, one of the team members, Sarah, began to raise her voice, making a sharp remark about the other's inability to meet expectations. The atmosphere in the room was heavy, and the team members were growing increasingly frustrated. At that moment, another colleague, James, intervened. He had been quietly observing the conversation, and instead of jumping into the fray with his own opinion or taking sides, he suggested they take a brief break. James recognized the tension and the emotional charge that was fueling the conversation. Rather than allowing the disagreement to escalate, he gently reminded everyone that taking a step back could help them return to the issue with a clearer perspective. After a few minutes of silence, the team reconvened. This time, James took the lead in guiding the conversation with patience and a more balanced tone. He asked thoughtful questions and offered suggestions that considered both perspectives. What followed was a much more productive discussion. Sarah, who had been defensive earlier, was now able to express her concerns more calmly, and the other colleague, Mark, was able to share his thoughts without feeling attacked. James's ability to stay calm and his choice of words created a more collaborative environment, allowing the team to arrive at a solution that everyone felt comfortable with. What could have been a heated, unproductive conflict was transformed into a respectful dialogue, all because of the application of patience and the thoughtful use of right speech. This story illustrates the profound impact that right speech, combined with patience, can have on transforming difficult situations. When we speak with intention and empathy, we create an environment where collaboration and understanding are possible, even in the most challenging circumstances. Right speech doesn't just prevent conflict, it actively fosters connection and cooperation. It's a tool for building trust, deepening relationships, and creating harmonious spaces for growth. One of the most powerful lessons from Buddhism about speech is the understanding that words carry immense power. In the Buddhist tradition, speech is not just a means of communication, it's a powerful force that can either heal or harm. The Buddha emphasized that speech should be used to promote peace, to encourage understanding, and to bring people together. In this sense, right speech is about cultivating a mindset that views communication as a sacred practice. It's not just about avoiding hurtful words. It's about choosing words that are helpful, that bring clarity, that encourage others to grow and reflect. Take, for instance, the practice of mindfulness. Mindful speech involves paying attention to the present moment and being fully aware of the impact our words may have on others. When we speak mindfully, we ensure that our words are rooted in compassion and truth, not in reaction or judgment. Mindful speech invites us to slow down and choose our words with care, giving space for reflection and thoughtful consideration. However, even the most mindful and patient individuals may occasionally slip into reactive speech. The pressures of daily life, the emotions we carry, or the pace at which we move can lead us to act impulsively. The key is recognizing these moments when we are about to speak hastily and taking a step back. One helpful technique is to breathe deeply before responding. This pause allows us to center ourselves, calm our nervous system, and gain clarity before speaking. It also gives us the opportunity to check our intentions. Are we speaking to promote understanding or to win an argument? Are our words aligned with kindness? Or are they simply a reflection of our frustration? The practice of right speech is not an overnight achievement. It's a lifelong process of self-awareness, self-discipline, and continuous growth. Patience is an essential ingredient in this process. It is through patience that we learn to pause, reflect, and engage with others in a way that fosters understanding rather than division. It is through patience that we learn to speak not out of reactivity, but from a place of wisdom and compassion. Moreover, the practice of right speech is closely connected to the concept of non-attachment. In Buddhism, non-attachment refers to letting go of our need to control outcomes or cling to particular expectations. When we speak without attachment, we are less likely to become defensive or insist on being right. We are able to engage in conversation with an open mind, understanding that our words are only one part of a larger conversation. This allows for more productive dialogue, where both parties can express their thoughts freely without fear of judgment or rejection. In addition to promoting harmony in personal relationships, right speech can also improve our professional lives. The workplace can often be a breeding ground for stress, competition, and miscommunication. Yet, when right speech is practiced, the work environment transforms into one of mutual respect, understanding, and collaboration. It fosters clear communication, reduces misunderstandings, and enhances teamwork. Leaders who practice right speech inspire trust and respect from their teams, as their words are seen as thoughtful, honest, and constructive. By cultivating patience and mindfulness in our speech, we create workplaces that are not only more productive but also more compassionate and supportive. Ultimately, right speech, coupled with patience, is about cultivating a mindset of care and respect in every interaction. It's about recognizing that our words have the power to build or destroy, to uplift or to tear down. By being mindful of how we speak and taking the time to consider the impact of our words, we create environments that nurture peace, understanding, and connection. Through this practice, we not only improve our relationships with others, but also cultivate a deeper sense of inner peace and self-respect. This is the transformative power of right speech. It allows us to communicate in ways that promote growth, healing, and connection both within ourselves and with others. Gratitude is often viewed as simply the act of appreciating the good things in our lives: our health, our relationships, our material possessions, or even the small, fleeting moments that bring us joy. While these are important aspects of gratitude, in the Buddhist tradition, gratitude is viewed through a deeper lens. It's not merely about acknowledging what we have, but a form of mindfulness that encourages a continuous reflection on our actions, our choices, and our inner state. Through this reflective practice, gratitude becomes not just a fleeting emotion but a transformative tool for cultivating self-awareness and personal growth. This insight into gratitude calls us to embrace all aspects of life, not just the pleasant moments, but also the challenges and setbacks, which can serve as valuable lessons in resilience and self-discovery. At its core, Buddhist gratitude is about shifting our perspective, moving away from the habit of focusing on what we lack or what isn't going right. Rather than seeing challenges as burdens or obstacles, we are invited to view them as opportunities for growth. This is a practice of deep reflection, taking the time to pause, examine our thoughts, and consider how our experiences, both positive and negative, contribute to our journey of self-improvement. When we approach gratitude in this way, we allow ourselves to be more attuned to the richness of our lives, finding meaning and purpose even in situations that initially seem unpleasant or unfair. A personal experience that helped me understand the depth of gratitude came after a difficult period in my life. A few years ago, I experienced a significant setback at work. I had been in a leadership position in a project that ultimately failed despite all the planning, effort, and enthusiasm that we had poured into it. At first, I was devastated. The failure felt like a personal defeat, and I struggled with feelings of inadequacy and frustration. I was fixated on what had gone wrong and why it hadn't worked out as expected. My mind constantly ran through all the things I could have done differently, the decisions that might have led to a better outcome. However, one evening, I decided to try something different, something I had heard about in the context of mindfulness and gratitude. I took a journal and started writing down everything I was grateful for, regardless of how I was feeling in that moment. I began by listing small things: good health, the support of friends, a roof over my head. Then, I forced myself to go deeper, asking myself, what if this setback was not just something to resent, but a lesson in disguise? What if this experience held valuable insights that I wasn't seeing in my frustration? The more I wrote, the more I began to shift my focus away from the failure itself and toward the lessons I had learned from it. In that journal, I wrote about the resilience I had developed through the struggle. I wrote about how I had learned to stay calm in the face of adversity, to communicate more effectively with my team, and to recognize my own limitations and areas for growth. I began to see that the failure wasn't just a point of defeat, but a crucial step on my path to self-improvement. Gratitude, in that moment, became a lens through which I could view my life's events not with judgment, but with acceptance, curiosity, and a deepened sense of awareness. This experience of using gratitude as a form of self-reflection had a profound impact on my mindset. I began to realize that gratitude wasn't just a passive practice, it was an active one. It was not just about saying thank you or acknowledging the good in my life. It was about cultivating a deep awareness of my thoughts and actions, reflecting on how I responded to challenges, and using that reflection as a springboard for growth. Gratitude, when used as a tool for self-reflection, helped me transform my perspective. It allowed me to see the value in every experience, whether it was one I enjoyed or one I struggled with. This mindset shift is not limited to the personal realm. It also affects how we relate to others. For example, in the aftermath of that work setback, I began to notice how my relationships with colleagues and friends changed as I deepened my gratitude practice. Where before, I might have focused on what was wrong or what others could have done differently, I now found myself appreciating the efforts, understanding, and compassion of those around me. I started seeing their actions through the lens of gratitude, acknowledging their support and contributions, and recognizing how their presence in my life helped me navigate challenges. This new perspective not only improved my relationship with others, but also renewed my sense of purpose. I felt more connected, more compassionate, and more focused on the things that truly mattered. Another example of how gratitude can reshape our view of life comes from a friend of mine who went through a difficult period of self-doubt and depression. For months, she struggled to find meaning in her life and felt disconnected from her sense of purpose. Despite having a supportive family, a stable job, and a comfortable home, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. It wasn't until she began a daily gratitude practice that her perspective started to shift. Each morning, she would write down 3 things she was grateful for. At first, it was difficult. She could only think of surface-level things: her family, her health, her job. But as she continued, she began to notice the subtler blessings in her life. She wrote about her morning coffee, the sound of birds outside her window, a meaningful conversation with a friend. Over time, her gratitude practice became less about just identifying positive things and more about seeing the beauty in everyday life. She began to find joy in the simplest moments, recognizing that her life was full of gifts that she had overlooked for far too long. Through this practice, she also began to reflect on her own actions and the way she had been treating herself. She had spent so much time focusing on what was lacking or what wasn't working that she hadn't paused to appreciate the person she was. Gratitude allowed her to recognize her own worth and the efforts she had put into healing and growing. She started to see her struggles not as failures, but as part of her ongoing journey toward personal growth. This shift in perspective helped her reframe her sense of self-worth, and in turn, she felt more connected to others and more in touch with her sense of purpose. One of the most powerful aspects of gratitude as a form of self-reflection is its ability to reframe our challenges and setbacks. In our culture, there is often a strong emphasis on success, achievement, and productivity. Failures or mistakes can be seen as something to avoid or be ashamed of. However, when we practice gratitude in a way that encourages reflection, we come to understand that challenges are an inevitable part of life, and they are not inherently negative. Instead, they offer us an opportunity to grow, to refine our character, and to learn more about ourselves and our values. In Buddhism, there's a concept called equanimity, which is the ability to remain calm and balanced in the face of life's ups and downs. Practicing gratitude encourages this sense of equanimity because it invites us to see life as a flow of experiences, some pleasant, some difficult, but all equally valuable in shaping who we are. When we embrace this mindset, we are better able to navigate the fluctuations of life with grace, recognizing that each moment offers us an opportunity for reflection, learning, and growth. This brings us to the deeper connection between gratitude and self-awareness. By reflecting on what we are grateful for, we become more aware of our inner world, our thoughts, our emotions, and our desires. This heightened self-awareness enables us to identify the patterns in our thinking and behavior that may be limiting our potential. For example, we may realize that we often focus on what's wrong in our lives, or we may notice recurring feelings of fear or insecurity that prevent us from taking risks. By acknowledging these patterns with gratitude, we create the space for change. We become more attuned to our true needs, desires, and values, which helps us make more conscious choices in our lives. Gratitude also enhances our ability to be present. When we are grateful, we are more likely to notice the beauty in the present moment, the warmth of the sun on our skin, the sound of laughter from a loved one, the joy of a quiet morning. This present moment awareness is key to living a mindful life. By slowing down and truly appreciating the here and now, we are better able to respond to life with openness, clarity, and compassion. To conclude, gratitude is not just about counting blessings or expressing thanks for the good things in life. It's a transformative practice that encourages deeper self-reflection, self-awareness, and growth. By practicing gratitude daily, we shift our focus from what is lacking to what is present, and we begin to see life not as a series of problems to solve, but as a series of opportunities for growth and connection. This practice allows us to embrace both the joys and challenges of life with a sense of mindfulness and equanimity, helping us navigate the ups and downs of life with greater resilience, purpose, and clarity. Through gratitude, we learn to appreciate not just what we have, but who we are and how we are evolving in each moment. In Buddhism, the concept of right livelihood is a fundamental part of the Eightfold Path, emphasizing the importance of choosing work that not only provides for our material needs, but also aligns with ethical values and contributes positively to society. It is a principle that recognizes work as an integral part of our lives, but not as something that should define us or enslave us to material desires. Right livelihood suggests that the way we earn a living should not cause harm to others or the environment, and it should be in harmony with the principles of compassion, honesty, and integrity. This path urges us to reflect deeply on the impact of our professional choices, not just on ourselves, but on the broader web of life. Humility is another key concept that ties closely with right livelihood. Humility, in this context, is not about self-deprecation or a lack of self-worth, but rather a recognition of our role in the larger tapestry of life. It's about understanding that no matter how skilled or successful we may become in our careers, we are part of a greater whole, and our work is connected to others in ways that we may not always see or fully comprehend. Humility allows us to approach our work with a sense of respect for others, recognizing that our success is often dependent on the collective efforts of many, and that we are not above or separate from those we work with. The idea that work should be in alignment with one's values is a powerful principle. It's easy to become entangled in the pursuit of success, wealth, or status in a world that often prioritizes these things. Yet, when we choose a career that aligns with our personal values, whether it's in service to others, in fostering creativity, or in protecting the environment, we find a deeper sense of purpose and fulfillment. This not only benefits our own well-being, but also garners respect from others, as people tend to recognize and admire integrity, dedication, and the willingness to contribute to something greater than oneself. A personal example of this principle in action comes from a time in my life when I was grappling with my career choices. I had been working in a high-paying corporate job for several years, climbing the ladder and achieving success in terms of financial security and social status. Yet, despite the outward signs of achievement, I often felt a deep sense of dissatisfaction. The work, while rewarding in some ways, felt disconnected from my core values. I began to question whether the hours I spent in the office, the deals I brokered, and the money I earned were truly contributing to the kind of world I wanted to live in. The corporate environment was competitive, profit-driven, and at times, soul-crushing. I was left with a nagging sense that my work, despite being lucrative, was contributing more to a system of exploitation than to the well-being of others. In this period of self-reflection, I began to explore alternative career paths that would allow me to align my professional life with my deeper values. I didn't have any concrete plan or guarantee of financial success, but I started considering roles where I could directly contribute to positive social change. This exploration led me to volunteer with a local nonprofit organization that focused on providing education and resources to underprivileged communities. I began teaching literacy classes in the evenings, and as I did, I realized that this work, though far less financially rewarding, was bringing me a sense of fulfillment that my corporate job never could. I wasn't earning as much money, but I felt richer in purpose and satisfaction. At first, making the transition was daunting. I was uncertain about how my new career would be perceived by others, leaving behind the prestige of a corporate job in favor of a lower-paying, less glamorous role in the social sector felt like a risk, one that could lead to judgment or skepticism from my peers. But over time, I began to realize that the true respect and joy I sought were not tied to the amount of money I made or the title on my business card. Instead, they came from the integrity of my work, the connections I made with people, and the sense that I was contributing in a meaningful way to the world. Humility played a significant role in this journey. It helped me to see that I didn't need to prove my worth by the size of my paycheck or the influence of my position. Instead, I could find fulfillment in simply showing up each day, doing the best I could, and recognizing the value in the small, everyday acts of kindness and service. Humility allowed me to view my new role as part of a much larger network of people working toward collective goals, understanding that my contribution, no matter how small, was part of something greater. This recognition helped to alleviate any lingering feelings of insecurity or inadequacy that I had about stepping away from a high-powered corporate career. This idea of right livelihood combined with humility can be seen clearly in the story of a woman I know who made a similar career shift. Lisa had spent most of her adult life working in the finance industry, securing a high-paying job in a prestigious firm right out of college. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. She had the income, the status, and the lifestyle that most people aspire to. But as the years passed, she began to feel disconnected from the work she was doing. The endless meetings, the focus on profits, and the cutthroat culture left her feeling empty. She realized that while her job provided financial security, it didn't provide meaning. One day, Lisa attended a volunteer event organized by a local organization that focused on mental health awareness and counseling services. There, she met a woman who had turned her life around after seeking therapy and found deep fulfillment in helping others do the same. This encounter sparked something in Lisa. She began to wonder if there was a way she could use her skills and talents in a more meaningful way, something that aligned more closely with her values. After much reflection, Lisa decided to make a significant change. She left her high-paying corporate job and enrolled in a social work program. The decision was not easy, and it certainly didn't come without financial sacrifices. But over time, Lisa found herself far more fulfilled. She became a counselor, working with people who struggled with mental health issues and helping them navigate through some of the most difficult challenges of their lives. The financial rewards were far less than in her previous career, but the satisfaction she gained from her work was immeasurable. What was most striking about Lisa's story was the respect she gained from those around her, not for the money she made, but for the courage it took to follow her values and make such a bold change. Her humility in taking on this new role, without the need for external validation or recognition, made her work even more meaningful. Lisa wasn't looking for praise or accolades. She simply wanted to contribute to something bigger than herself. And through this quiet humility, she earned the respect and admiration of her colleagues. clients, and community. Humility and right livelihood together teach us an important lesson about the relationship between work, fulfillment, and integrity. In a world that often values wealth and success above all else, these teachings remind us that true success is not measured by external markers like salary or status, but by the alignment of our work with our values and the impact it has on others. When we choose a livelihood that reflects our core principles, we not only enrich our own lives, but also create positive ripples in the lives of those around us. Moreover, when we approach our work with humility, understanding that we are a part of a larger system and that our contributions are just one piece of a much bigger puzzle, we can find joy and satisfaction in even the most modest roles. In today's fast-paced, competitive world, it's easy to get caught up in the idea that success is defined by the amount of money we make, the title we hold, or the social recognition we receive. But the stories of people like myself and Lisa show us that the path to true fulfillment and respect often lies in something deeper. It lies in choosing work that is meaningful, that aligns with our values, and that allows us to serve others. It lies in the humility to recognize our role within the greater whole, and to understand that we are part of a much larger tapestry of life. When we embrace this perspective, our work becomes not just a means of earning a living, but a source of deep personal satisfaction and contribution to the world around us. Forgiveness is an essential concept in Buddhist philosophy, seen not only as a virtue but as a necessary practice for emotional freedom and peace. In Buddhism, the understanding of forgiveness is deeply rooted in the idea that holding on to resentment and grudges traps us in negative emotional cycles, preventing us from moving forward. The act of forgiving, whether it's forgiving others or ourselves, is not a favor to the person who wronged us, but a release of the emotional burdens that weigh heavily on our own hearts. It's a process of healing and self-liberation. Through the practice of forgiveness, we cleanse our minds and hearts, allowing us to experience the freedom that comes with letting go of anger, bitterness, and regret. When we carry the weight of unresolved grievances, they affect every aspect of our lives. Whether it's bitterness toward a friend who betrayed us, anger toward a family member who hurt us, or regret for past mistakes, these negative emotions create a constant undercurrent of tension and unhappiness. Our minds become cluttered, our relationships become strained, and we find it difficult to move forward in any meaningful way. Holding on to resentment becomes a prison, and the key to unlocking it lies in forgiveness. Forgiveness does not mean excusing bad behavior or ignoring the hurt that has been caused. It doesn't mean that we condone the actions of others, nor does it mean that we immediately forget the pain we've endured. What forgiveness does mean is that we release the emotional hold that the past has over us. It means that we choose to stop letting the actions of others dictate our emotional state and our happiness. In Buddhist teachings, this practice is often linked with the concept of letting go of attachment. Attachment to negative emotions such as anger, bitterness, and regret only perpetuates our suffering. Forgiveness allows us to cut the ties that bind us to those emotions, enabling us to heal and move forward in peace. From a personal perspective, I've come to realize that forgiveness is not just about mending relationships with others. It's deeply about healing ourselves. One of the most powerful lessons I learned in my life was that forgiveness is more for the person doing the forgiving than the person being forgiven. I came to this realization through a very difficult period in my own life, one that involved a significant conflict with a close family member. This conflict had been ongoing for years, and at one point, it seemed as though our relationship would never recover. We had hurt each other deeply, and the anger and bitterness that built up over time created a wall that was difficult to break down. I had tried, many times, to fix things, but each attempt felt like it only made things worse. For years, I carried the weight of resentment, convinced that the other person was the one at fault. I felt justified in my anger, and the more I held on to it, the more entrenched I became in my negative feelings. I remember waking up some mornings with a heavy heart, not able to fully enjoy the day because of the conflict that lingered in my mind. I was stuck in a cycle, unable to move forward, unable to feel peace, unable to experience joy in my life, because the unresolved anger took up so much emotional space. Eventually, I realized that my inability to forgive was doing far more harm to me than it was to the other person. I was allowing my anger to control my emotions, my thoughts, and my actions. The person I was angry with had likely moved on, but I was still carrying that burden, and it was suffocating me. I decided to make the conscious choice to let go of my resentment. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. Forgiveness, as I discovered, is a process. It's not a switch that you can flip, but rather a gradual unfolding of the heart. However, the moment I decided to release the bitterness, a sense of lightness began to return to me. Forgiveness, in my experience, was not an act of reconciliation with the other person. It was an act of reconciliation with myself. It was about freeing myself from the emotional prison I had built around that resentment. Once I forgave, I was no longer emotionally chained to the past. I didn't need to carry the weight of that anger anymore. I had found a sense of peace within myself that had been eluding me for so long. One of the most powerful realizations I had during this process was that forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean we have to continue in the same relationship dynamic with the person we are forgiving. Forgiveness doesn't always involve reconciliation. Sometimes, forgiving someone means letting go of the expectation that they will ever change or that things will return to the way they were. It's about releasing the emotional grip that the hurt has on us. In my case, forgiving this family member didn't mean that we immediately resumed our old relationship. It didn't mean we were suddenly best friends again, but it did mean that I had let go of the emotional baggage I was carrying. It was a step toward healing, a step toward moving forward, and a step toward emotional freedom. I've also seen the power of forgiveness in the lives of others, particularly in the context of deep betrayals and personal traumas. A close friend of mine once shared a story of a significant betrayal by someone they trusted, someone they had considered a mentor. The betrayal was not just emotional. It was also a professional setback that affected my friend's career for years. The pain and hurt were deep, and for a long time, my friend struggled with feelings of anger and bitterness. Every time the situation was brought up, it was as though a wound was reopened, and the same feelings of betrayal and injustice flooded back. It took my friend a long time to even consider forgiveness. The idea of forgiving someone who had caused such profound pain seemed impossible at first, but over time, as they did the hard work of self-reflection and emotional healing, they began to understand that forgiveness wasn't about excusing the other person's behavior or even reconciling with them. It was about releasing the hold that the betrayal had on their life. My friend decided that forgiveness was something they were doing for themselves, not for the person who had caused the hurt. In their case, the decision to forgive didn't come from a place of weakness, but from a place of strength. It was the strength to let go of the anger and bitterness that were preventing them from moving forward. Forgiving the betrayer didn't mean that my friend accepted the actions, but it allowed them to regain their power. It allowed them to shift their focus from the past to the future, from pain to possibility. And as my friend continued to heal, they found that their relationships deepened and became more genuine. Their emotional life became more balanced, and their ability to experience joy was restored. The decision to forgive was one of the most liberating choices they made, and it opened up a new chapter in their life that was filled with greater peace and contentment. Forgiveness can be incredibly difficult, especially when the hurt is deep. But the act of forgiveness holds the power to heal not just the emotional wounds we carry, but also the relationships that have been fractured by our past hurts. When we forgive, we don't just free the other person from our anger. We free ourselves from the emotional weight that has been holding us back. It is a practice that requires vulnerability, compassion, and the courage to let go of the past. But as difficult as it may be, the rewards are immeasurable. Forgiveness doesn't just lead to emotional freedom. It creates space for deeper connections, for greater peace, and for a richer, more fulfilled life. Ultimately, the act of forgiving is a gift we give to ourselves. It is an act of self-care and emotional healing. It's not about condoning harm or forgetting the wrongs that were done. It's about choosing to release the power that those wrongs have over us. And in doing so, we open the door to emotional freedom, peace, and healing that transforms our lives and the relationships we have with others. Through forgiveness, we can break free from the cycles of pain, resentment, and suffering, and step into a life that is more aligned with love, compassion, and inner peace. Generosity, in its deepest sense, is not merely about giving physical things to others. It is, at its core, an expression of kindness, care, and compassion. In Buddhist philosophy, generosity, or dana, is considered one of the most important virtues, transcending material possessions to encompass time, attention, and wisdom. It is an act that doesn't just benefit the receiver, but also the giver, fostering a sense of interconnectedness, respect, and mutual compassion. When we give generously, we create ripples of positive energy that extend far beyond the moment of the gift itself. The Buddhist insight on generosity emphasizes that it is not just the material act of giving that matters. The intention and the heart behind it hold the true value. A generous heart is one that is open, willing to offer kindness without expectation of return. It is not measured by the size or cost of what is given, but by the sincerity and compassion with which it is given. Whether it's offering a meal, sharing wisdom, giving your time to listen, or showing understanding to someone in distress, generosity is a means of connecting with others in a meaningful, heartfelt way. In the modern world, generosity is often perceived as something that must be grandiose or material, but this is a limited view. Generosity is truly about the energy that we put out into the world. It is the smile we offer to a stranger when they pass us by, the small kindnesses we extend to the people around us, and even the simple act of pausing to listen to someone who needs to be heard. These small actions, though they may seem insignificant in the moment, often have an enormous impact, both on the person receiving them and on those who witness them. A few years ago, I had an experience that deeply changed my understanding of generosity. I was in a bustling city, walking home after a long day of work. As I passed a street corner, I noticed a homeless man sitting on the sidewalk, looking tired and worn. He was holding a cardboard sign that read, "Hungry, please help." I had seen people in similar situations countless times, but that day something in me shifted. I didn't just walk past him like I usually did. Something within me felt compelled to help. I walked into a nearby cafe and bought a warm meal, then returned to where the man was sitting. As I handed him the meal, I didn't expect anything in return. I didn't think about how little or much I had given. I was just giving from the heart. To my surprise, the man smiled up at me, his eyes filled with gratitude. He thanked me, and we exchanged a few brief words. But the interaction left me with a profound sense of connection. What I didn't expect, however, was the ripple effect that this small act of generosity would have on the rest of my day. After handing the meal to the homeless man, I continued on my walk home, but I felt a lightness in my step that I hadn't experienced before. The simple act of giving had not only made a difference in the man's day, but it also brightened my own. As I passed by others on the street, I found myself smiling at people, giving them a small nod or acknowledging them with a glance. I felt more connected to the people around me, more aware of the shared humanity we all carry. What was most interesting, however, was the ripple effect that extended beyond me. Later that evening, I was at a coffee shop, and I overheard a conversation between two people. One was talking about how they had witnessed an act of kindness earlier that day. Someone had helped an elderly woman carry her groceries, and it had inspired them to do something kind for someone else. It made me realize that generosity isn't just a private exchange between the giver and the receiver. It spreads outward, affecting others in ways that we may never fully understand. The kindness I extended to one person had inspired others to do the same, creating a web of goodwill that expanded far beyond that single moment. Generosity, I've come to learn, is not just an isolated act. It is a force that creates connection, fosters community, and strengthens bonds between people. The impact of even a small act of kindness can spread outward, creating a ripple effect that touches countless lives. In fact, the simple act of kindness may be just what someone needs to turn their day around, to feel seen and appreciated, or to remind them that they are not alone in the world. From a broader perspective, I believe that generosity has the potential to transform society as a whole. We often hear about the negativity that pervades the world: conflict, division, and mistrust seem to dominate the headlines. But I've seen firsthand how small, seemingly insignificant acts of generosity can shift the atmosphere of an entire community. When one person acts with kindness, it doesn't just affect the person receiving the kindness, it encourages others to do the same. It has a contagious energy that spreads far and wide. Take, for example, the story of a community organization I once volunteered with. It was a small group of individuals working together to provide food and shelter for those in need. On one particular day, we were hosting a meal for the homeless, and the volunteers were preparing food, setting up tables, and chatting with the people who had gathered. One volunteer, a woman in her late 60s, was quietly serving food to a man who appeared to be in his 40s. She smiled at him, gave him a warm greeting, and served him a generous portion of food. As the man took the plate, he paused for a moment, looked up at her, and said, "You don't know how much this means to me." He went on to explain that he had been struggling with homelessness for the past several months, and the simple act of kindness had been enough to lift his spirits. His words were filled with gratitude, and you could see the emotional impact it had on him. The volunteers at the event were not simply giving food, they were giving their time, their attention, and their kindness. This act of generosity created a moment of connection, reminding that we are all part of a greater community. Over the course of the day, the ripple effect was felt. One of the volunteers, inspired by the interactions they had witnessed, reached out to a friend to ask for support in their own charity work. Another volunteer shared a post on social media about the experience, urging others to get involved in similar efforts. Generosity is not bound by the size of the gift. It's not about how much we have to give, but the intention behind it. A small act, whether it's offering a compliment, helping someone with directions, or simply being present with someone who needs to talk, can make a profound difference. I believe that our world would be a far better place if we each committed to practicing small acts of generosity every day. These moments of kindness are like drops in a vast ocean. They may seem insignificant on their own, but together they create waves that can change the world. As a society, we often overlook the power of everyday generosity. We are conditioned to believe that generosity requires significant sacrifices or large donations. However, true generosity, in its essence, is about showing up for one another in simple, everyday ways. It is the neighbor who checks in on an elderly resident, the friend who offers a listening ear, the colleague who shares wisdom without expecting anything in return. These actions may seem small, but they are often the ones that leave the most lasting impact. For example, I recall a time when a co-worker of mine, who was known for his reserved nature, took the time to offer a thoughtful comment during a meeting. It wasn't a grand gesture or anything that would change the course of the business, but his words showed that he had taken the time to listen and understand. That small act made me feel seen and heard, and it gave me the confidence to share more openly in the future. His generosity wasn't in the form of material gifts, but in his genuine attention and care. In essence, generosity is about recognizing our interconnectedness with others. It's about understanding that, while we may not always be able to solve someone's problems, we can offer something that can make their day a little brighter, their burden a little lighter, or their heart a little warmer. By doing so, we create a ripple effect of kindness that spreads throughout our communities and beyond. The key takeaway is that generosity, regardless of its form, is an act that transcends the immediate moment. It spreads outwards, creating connections, fostering goodwill, and reminding us all of our shared humanity. Generosity is not limited to giving material things. It encompasses time, attention, and emotional support. It is through these small, thoughtful acts that we truly begin to experience the interconnectedness of all beings and the profound impact we can have on one another's lives. And in the end, the generosity we extend to others is also a gift we give to ourselves, creating a world that is kinder, more compassionate, and more connected. Contentment is a concept that, while seemingly simple, holds a profound depth in both Buddhist philosophy and in everyday life. At its core, contentment is not about the accumulation of things or experiences. It's about finding peace with what we already have. Buddhist teachings emphasize that contentment is one of the key factors that contribute to a fulfilled life. It is the opposite of the insatiable desire for more, which often leads to frustration, anxiety, and a constant feeling of inadequacy. In Buddhism, this is closely linked to the idea of santosa, or contentment, which encourages us to embrace the present moment and be grateful for what we have, rather than continually striving for more. When we embrace contentment, we shift our focus from what is missing to what is already present. This doesn't mean that we stop striving for improvement or growth. Rather, it means that we approach life with an attitude of sufficiency and appreciation for the abundance that exists right in front of us. This idea can be especially transformative in a world that relentlessly promotes consumerism and the notion that happiness comes from acquiring more things, more status, more experiences. However, the Buddhist insight invites us to challenge this assumption and to find peace with less. Mindful consumption is an extension of this principle, urging us to be conscious not only of what we consume materially, but also how we consume information, entertainment, and experiences. Buddhist teachings encourage us to make choices that are sustainable and ethical, not just for our own well-being, but for the well-being of the world around us. This kind of consumption is rooted in mindfulness, the practice of being fully present and aware of our choices and their impacts. It calls on us to pause before we act, to ask ourselves whether a particular purchase, activity, or habit is truly serving us or contributing to the collective good. Mindful consumption is especially relevant in today's digital age, where the line between necessary and excessive consumption is increasingly blurred. We are constantly bombarded with information, advertisements, and media, and it's easy to fall into patterns of overindulgence. Social media, for example, is designed to be addictive, often promoting a cycle of comparison, dissatisfaction, and endless scrolling. The more time we spend immersed in these digital spaces, the less time we have to engage meaningfully with our own lives and with the people around us. Overconsumption of media, whether it's social media, news, or entertainment, can erode our mental peace, distorting our perceptions of reality and amplifying stress. For many years, I struggled with an overwhelming sense of dissatisfaction, despite having everything I thought I needed: success in my career, a comfortable home, and access to entertainment and information. But no matter how much I acquired, I always felt like something was missing. It wasn't until I started applying the principle of mindful consumption in my life that I began to see a shift. The process began with a deep reflection on my habits and how they impacted my well-being. The first area I focused on was material consumption. I started by decluttering my home, which had become filled with things I didn't truly need. At first, it felt difficult. There was a sense of attachment to some of the objects, and the idea of parting with them felt unsettling. But as I began sorting through things, I realized that the items I had accumulated were not adding value to my life. Rather, they were weighing me down. I began to let go of things that no longer served me, whether it was clothing that no longer fit or books I had read but never revisited. This process of decluttering was liberating. It wasn't just about creating a more organized space, it was about letting go of the attachment to material things that had been distracting me from what truly mattered. With each item I let go of, I felt lighter, more free. My home became a space where I could actually breathe and think, rather than being overwhelmed by possessions that I didn't really need. The act of simplifying my physical environment brought me a sense of clarity and calm that I hadn't experienced before. But contentment, I realized, wasn't just about the material things in my life. It extended to how I consumed information and experiences. I had become increasingly aware of the time I spent on social media, scrolling endlessly through feeds that left me feeling anxious, inadequate, and disconnected. The constant bombardment of other people's lives, achievements, and curated images created a false sense of comparison. I started to recognize that, while social media is meant to connect people, it often had the opposite effect on me. It made me feel more disconnected from my own life, as I was more focused on what others were doing than appreciating what I had. So, I decided to take a step back. I limited my time on social media, unsubscribed from email lists that filled my inbox with unnecessary distractions, and made a conscious effort to spend more time offline. This wasn't about rejecting technology or the digital world entirely. It was about setting boundaries and being more intentional with my time. I also began to apply mindfulness to how I consumed news, rather than mindlessly scrolling through headlines that fueled my anxiety. I started to choose sources of information more thoughtfully, focusing on balanced perspectives and taking time to reflect on what I was learning. This shift in my media consumption brought an unexpected sense of peace. By reducing my exposure to the noise and clutter of the digital world, I found myself more present in my daily life. I started paying more attention to my surroundings, to the people I interacted with, and to my own thoughts and feelings. I no longer felt like I was constantly racing against some external standard of success or happiness. Instead, I began to realize that contentment was not something that could be found by acquiring more, but by appreciating what was already here. The ripple effect of this change was profound. As I became more content with my life and possessions, I noticed that my relationships also began to shift. I had more time and energy to invest in the people around me, without feeling distracted or overwhelmed. I became more present in conversations, more attuned to the needs of those I cared about. I also found myself being more generous with my time and energy, not because I was obligated to, but because I genuinely wanted to share in the joy of others. The practice of contentment is not about forcing ourselves to stop wanting or desiring things. It's about realizing that contentment is a state of mind that we can cultivate, independent of external circumstances. It's about understanding that happiness and fulfillment don't come from accumulating more stuff, but from learning to be at peace with what we already have. This doesn't mean that we stop pursuing our goals or seeking improvement in our lives, but rather that we do so with an attitude of contentment, recognizing that we are enough as we are. The Buddhist concept of mindful consumption teaches us that our choices matter. Every decision we make, whether it's about the products we buy, the media we consume, or the experiences we pursue, has an impact on our well-being and on the world around us. By choosing with mindfulness and intention, we not only improve our own lives, but also contribute to a more sustainable and harmonious world. The idea of mindful consumption also extends to how we engage in relationships. In a world where so much of our attention is divided and distracted, taking the time to truly listen to others and be present in our interactions is an act of generosity and care. It is easy to rush through conversations or become distracted by our phones or our own thoughts, but true connection requires mindfulness. When we consume relationships mindfully, we give people the gift of our full attention, and in turn, we cultivate deeper, more meaningful connections. In the end, contentment is about living a life of intention. It's about making choices that align with our values, rather than being swept away by the endless tide of consumerism and distraction. By practicing mindfulness in all aspects of our lives, from our material possessions to our media consumption, to our relationships, we create space for true happiness and fulfillment. We come to realize that contentment is not a destination, but a practice. And it is in this practice that we find the peace and clarity we seek. Equanimity, in Buddhist thought, is the ability to remain balanced, calm, and peaceful, regardless of external circumstances. It's about maintaining an inner peace that isn't swayed by the unpredictable nature of life. Whether we're enjoying moments of success or struggling through challenges, equanimity calls on us to stay grounded. This concept is rooted deeply in Buddhist philosophy, which teaches that life's fluctuations, both the highs and the lows, are inevitable, and how we respond to them is what determines our true state of peace. In its simplest form, equanimity is about balance. It's not about suppressing our emotions or pretending to be unaffected by difficulties. Instead, it's about developing the ability to experience life's ups and downs without being overly attached to any particular outcome. It's about accepting that both pleasure and pain, joy and sorrow, are part of the human experience. Buddhist teachings stress that suffering comes from our attachment to things, whether it's our desire for more, our fear of losing what we have, or our resistance to life's natural ebb and flow. Equanimity, therefore, becomes the practice of releasing that attachment, letting go of the need for control, and finding peace regardless of what happens. The The key to equanimity is not about avoiding emotions or detaching ourselves from the world. It's about responding to life's challenges with wisdom and composure. The Buddhist teaching of anicca, impermanence, encourages us to understand that everything good or bad is temporary. Therefore, when faced with hardship or joy, the skill lies in remembering that these moments will pass, and our peace doesn't depend on them. In practical terms, equanimity becomes the ability to navigate through stress, conflict, and difficult emotions without losing our center. It doesn't mean we ignore our feelings or try to block out negative experiences. Rather, it's about responding with awareness and self-control, rather than reacting impulsively or letting the emotions dictate our behavior. In essence, equanimity allows us to remain steady in the face of life's unpredictability. This is especially relevant in our modern world, where we face constant uncertainty, from personal setbacks to global crises. Developing resilience through equanimity isn't just about enduring challenges, it's about growing stronger as a result of them. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity, and equanimity provides a stable foundation from which we can recover. It's a way of practicing emotional flexibility, acknowledging that hardships will come, but we can choose how to respond. It teaches us that resilience isn't about resisting the negative, but about embracing the entire range of human experiences with grace and composure. I remember a particularly trying family situation where I was forced to practice equanimity in a very real and personal way. Several years ago, a close relative became seriously ill, and the family was thrust into a whirlwind of medical decisions, emotional turmoil, and uncertain futures. In the midst of all this, there was a lot of tension between family members, each person dealing with the stress in their own way. Some were angry, some were fearful, others were in denial. The situation was unpredictable and chaotic, and I could feel the anxiety growing within me as well. But I had been practicing mindfulness and equanimity at that point for some time, so I knew the importance of keeping my balance, not just for my own peace of mind, but to contribute to the family's collective well-being. I realized that the stress everyone was feeling wasn't just about the illness itself, but about how we each perceived it, and the emotional attachments we had to certain outcomes. Some of us were desperately trying to control the situation. Others were grappling with a fear of the worst outcome, and a few were just trying to avoid facing the reality of what was happening. I decided that I would do my best to remain calm, present, and composed, regardless of what came. I would acknowledge my fears and frustrations, but not let them take control of my actions. This wasn't an easy decision, especially when emotions ran high. But over time, I noticed that my calmness helped to escalate many of the tense moments. Rather than getting caught up in arguments or reacting to each emotional outburst, I focused on offering support and making decisions from a place of clear-headedness. In one particularly intense moment, a family member lashed out at another in frustration over a decision we had to make regarding the patient's care. It was a heated exchange, but instead of reacting with anger or defensiveness, I quietly stepped in, asked if we could take a breath, and suggested that we all take a moment to reflect on the bigger picture. It didn't solve everything immediately, but it allowed the conversation to move away from confrontation toward collaboration. That experience showed me that equanimity doesn't mean avoiding conflict, it means handling conflict with the understanding that our responses can either escalate or de-escalate a situation. Equanimity is not just about keeping the peace in difficult moments. It's about internalizing that peace as a foundation, regardless of what happens. This foundation of balance and composure has profound implications for resilience because it shifts the focus from the external to the internal. When we develop the ability to remain balanced, no matter what life throws at us, we cultivate emotional resilience. This resilience isn't about avoiding pain or hardship, it's about being able to meet it head-on, with the confidence that we can handle whatever comes our way and learn from it. Take the example of someone like Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, psychiatrist, and author of Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl's account of his time in concentration camps illustrates the power of equanimity in the face of unimaginable suffering. Despite the horrific conditions, Frankl maintained a sense of inner peace by focusing on his attitude toward the suffering rather than the suffering itself. He believed that even in the direst circumstances, We have the power to choose how we respond. Frankel's story is a profound example of resilience rooted in equanimity, a lesson that even in the worst of times, our inner peace and sense of purpose are within our control. Similarly, I recall a friend of mine who faced a major health crisis. She had been diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, and the prognosis was uncertain. Despite the emotional toll it took on her, she was able to maintain an incredible sense of peace throughout her treatment. I don't mean that she was indifferent to her situation or numb to the fear and pain she experienced. Rather, she approached her illness with a sense of equanimity. She accepted her diagnosis and the ups and downs of her treatment with a kind of grace that inspired those around her, while others in her family and social circle became overwhelmed with anxiety. She remained calm and centered, focusing on her recovery with resilience rather than despair. Her equanimity in the face of hardship not only helped her maintain a sense of inner peace, but also made her a source of strength for others. People admired her ability to remain composed and positive, and that respect was not born out of her physical health or outward success, but from the way she handled herself in the face of adversity. Her ability to stay calm, composed, and hopeful in the midst of such a difficult challenge served as a powerful reminder that our responses to challenges define us, often more than the challenges themselves. Equanimity teaches us that we are not victims of life's circumstances, but active participants in how we meet them. Life will inevitably throw challenges our way, some expected, others completely unforeseen. How we respond to these challenges shapes not only our mental and emotional well-being, but also the respect and admiration we earn from others. People are drawn to those who face adversity with composure, who are able to stay calm and clear-headed, and who navigate difficult situations without losing their balance. This is the essence of resilience, remaining steadfast and unshaken, even in the face of hardship. In the end, equanimity isn't just about personal peace. It's about how our peace ripples out into the world. When we can remain balanced, calm, and composed, we not only preserve our own inner peace, but also influence those around us. Our ability to stay steady in difficult situations inspires others to do the same, and that collective resilience becomes a powerful force for change. Life is unpredictable, and the challenges we face may be beyond our control, but our response to them is always within our power. And that, ultimately, is what determines our peace, our resilience, and the respect we earn from those around us. Buddhist teachings are often seen as abstract and philosophical, distant from the practical challenges of our everyday lives. However, these teachings offer profound guidance for living a more fulfilling and peaceful life, especially in the modern world, where we constantly seek external sources of respect, happiness, and purpose. One of the central messages in Buddhism is that the key to fulfillment, peace, and respect doesn't lie in the world around us, but in the way we cultivate our inner lives. The teachings are not just spiritual concepts, they are practical tools for personal transformation. By aligning our actions with these principles, we can attract not only inner peace, but also the respect and admiration of others. At the heart of Buddhist philosophy is the concept of interconnectedness. The idea that all beings are interconnected is central to understanding our shared humanity. In Buddhism, this interconnectedness is not just about physical connections, but also about emotional and spiritual ties. The notion that we are all linked in some way allows us to empathize with the struggles and joys of others. This realization leads to compassion, an essential aspect of living a fulfilling life. Living with compassion isn't merely about showing kindness or charity. It's about understanding that we are all facing similar challenges in different forms. Compassion comes from recognizing ourselves in others, which creates a deep sense of connection and empathy. A small act of kindness like helping a stranger in need may seem insignificant, but in reality, it can have a profound effect. When I helped a stranger who was struggling to carry heavy bags up a flight of stairs, I didn't just alleviate their burden. I felt a sense of growth and joy that came from helping someone else. It made me realize that in acts of kindness, we are often more enriched than those we help. This kind of recognition transforms our relationship with others. It becomes less about helping and more about connecting. Cultivating deeper empathy in our daily lives isn't always easy. It involves taking the time to listen attentively to others, offering help without expecting anything in return, and practicing compassion even when it's difficult. For instance, I remember a time when I was stuck in traffic, and the driver in front of me was driving erratically. My immediate reaction was frustration and anger, but I took a moment to pause and reflect. What if they were in a rush due to an emergency? What if their stress was not aimed at me, but was a result of their own struggles? This pause changed my response completely. Instead of honking the horn and speeding past them, I took a deep breath and allowed the situation to unfold. By recognizing the interconnectedness of all beings, I was able to avoid unnecessary conflict and maintain peace. One of the most profound teachings in Buddhism is the importance of right speech. Right speech isn't just about speaking the truth, but also about speaking in ways that are kind and helpful to others. It is easy to fall into reactive speech, especially in stressful situations. When we feel under pressure, our words can often come out harshly, and sometimes we say things we don't mean. I remember a time at work when I was under tight deadlines, and a colleague made a small mistake that delayed the project. My first impulse was to snap at them, but I paused. By practicing patience, I was able to choose my words carefully and address the situation constructively. Instead of creating more tension, we worked together to resolve the issue calmly. This is the power of right speech combined with patience. Patience is about allowing time for thoughtful communication rather than reacting impulsively. When we speak with kindness and mindfulness, we not only resolve conflicts more peacefully, but also earn the respect of those around us. In many ways, patience isn't just about dealing with others, it's about dealing with ourselves. In stressful situations, when our emotions are heightened, patience allows us to step back, center ourselves, and respond with clarity. Gratitude is another practice that lies at the heart of Buddhist teachings, though it often goes beyond just acknowledging what we are thankful for. Gratitude, in the Buddhist sense, is a practice of mindfulness and self-reflection. It encourages us to look beyond the surface level of our circumstances and find deeper meaning in both the joys and challenges of life. For example, at a point in my career, I faced a significant setback. I had been passed over for a promotion I had been working toward for years. Initially, I felt bitter and defeated, but after taking time to reflect, I realized that this setback was an opportunity to grow. It pushed me to reevaluate my goals and the path I was on. Through the practice of gratitude, I began to see the setback not as a failure but as a blessing. It taught me resilience and helped me focus on what truly mattered: personal growth, the value of hard work, and the importance of adapting to change. Reflecting on moments of hardship in our lives with gratitude can transform the way we perceive them. Instead of resenting challenges, we can embrace them as opportunities for learning and growth. The practice of gratitude also helps us appreciate the present moment, the people around us, and the simple joys of life. Humility and right livelihood go hand in hand. In Buddhism, right livelihood is the practice of choosing work that aligns with ethical values and contributes positively to society. But equally important is the humility we bring to our work. Humility is the recognition that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. Our work, no matter how significant or humble, plays a role in the greater tapestry of life. This humility allows us to recognize that success and fulfillment come from doing work that serves a greater purpose, rather than simply seeking external validation or financial rewards. For example, I have a friend who transitioned from a high-paying corporate job to teaching in a low-income school. Initially, this change felt like a step backward in terms of financial security and status, but the fulfillment she found in teaching young children far exceeded the material rewards she had previously enjoyed. The respect she earned from her students, parents, and colleagues came not from her salary or title, but from the heart of her work. Her humility and commitment to serving others brought her a sense of peace and satisfaction that no corporate title ever could. Another essential teaching in Buddhism is forgiveness. Forgiveness is central to emotional healing because it releases us from the burden of resentment and anger. Holding on to grudges keeps us trapped in negative cycles, while forgiveness frees us. Forgiveness is not just for the other person. It is for our own peace. I recall a situation in my family where years of unresolved conflict had created a rift between me and a relative. After many years of harboring resentment, I finally decided to approach the situation with forgiveness, not for their benefit, but for mine. The act of forgiving allowed me to heal emotionally and re-establish a healthy relationship. It wasn't about excusing the hurtful actions, but about freeing myself from the hold they had on me. The act of letting go brought me peace and deepened my connection with that person. Generosity, in Buddhism, is about much more than giving material goods. It is about sharing our time, our attention, and our wisdom. A generous heart radiates respect and kindness. I once witnessed an act of generosity that exemplified this principle. One evening, I saw a person buying a meal for a homeless person sitting outside a restaurant. At first glance, this seemed like a simple act of charity, but it had a much deeper impact. The homeless man thanked the giver, but what struck me was the conversation they had. The person who bought the meal didn't just give food. They engaged the man in conversation, treated him with dignity, and listened to his story. That act of kindness created a ripple effect. The homeless man later helped another stranger who had been in a similar situation. Generosity doesn't just affect the person receiving, it can create a ripple that spreads throughout the community, fostering connection and empathy. Mindful consumption is an important principle in Buddhism as well. In a world of overconsumption, we are constantly bombarded with messages telling us to want more, to buy more, to consume more. However, contentment and mindful consumption teach us that peace comes from embracing what we have and making ethical and sustainable choices. Overconsumption, whether of material goods, information, or even relationships, drains us and disrupts our peace. In my own life, I found that reducing clutter, both physical and mental, brought me more clarity and peace. By simplifying my surroundings and cutting back on unnecessary distractions, such as excessive media consumption, I was able to focus more on the things that truly matter. This practice of mindful consumption not only reduced stress, but also allowed me to cultivate a sense of contentment with what I already had. Equanimity is perhaps one of the most powerful tools in facing life's challenges. Life is unpredictable, and hardship is inevitable. The key is how we respond to adversity. Equanimity teaches us to maintain balance and peace, regardless of the circumstances. For instance, a close friend of mine faced a health crisis that seemed insurmountable. Despite the prognosis, she remained calm and composed throughout her treatment. This didn't mean she wasn't scared or overwhelmed at times. It meant that she was able to stay grounded and resilient in the face of hardship. Her ability to remain composed through such adversity not only earned her the admiration of others, but also helped her stay focused on recovery. Equanimity teaches us that we cannot control life's outcomes, but we can control our responses. By letting go of attachment to outcomes and embracing life's unpredictability, we cultivate resilience and inner peace. In conclusion, Buddhist teachings provide us with profound insights into how we can live lives filled with respect, peace, and fulfillment. These teachings are not distant ideals. They are practical tools that we can apply to every aspect of our daily lives. By practicing interconnectedness, right speech, gratitude, humility, forgiveness, generosity, mindful consumption, and equanimity, we can cultivate not only inner peace, but also earn the respect and admiration of those around us. In the end, respect and fulfillment are not something we need to seek, they are the natural result of living in alignment with our highest values. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the powerful concept of interconnectedness, which reminds us that we're all part of this vast, intricate web of life, to the transformative effects of right speech and patience. These teachings are more than just spiritual philosophy. They are practical tools that, when applied, can genuinely reshape the way we live, the way we respond to life's challenges, and the way we earn respect from those around us. Remember, respect isn't something we chase externally. It's something we attract naturally when we live with integrity, compassion, and mindfulness. And while these teachings may be centuries old, they still hold the key to navigating our modern world in a way that brings us peace, respect, and fulfillment. Now, before you go, I want to ask you a couple of things. How can you apply these teachings to your life? Whether it's by practicing patience in your conversations, being more generous with your time and kindness, or even simply embracing the challenges you face as opportunities to grow. The path to greater respect and inner peace starts with small, everyday actions. If you found value in today's video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more insightful content, and click the bell so you never miss a video. Share this video with someone who could use a little more peace and perspective in their life. Together, we can spread these timeless lessons and create a ripple of positive change. And finally, I'd love to hear from you. Share in the comments below. What's one teaching from this video that resonated most with you? Let's start a conversation about how we can all work towards being the best versions of ourselves, one small step at a time. Thank you for watching. And as always, keep growing, keep evolving, and most importantly, keep spreading love and respect. Until next time,